Okay, I'm looking over here at my computer while that thing's firing up over there, and it looks like the live feed is up and running. Great. So, I'm very excited to be coming to you live once again and partnering with Bowtech to bring you this whole live series. I appreciate everyone who has been tuning into the live show. Terry, what's up? How you doing? You're the first person to comment in the chat room here. And here comes Brad from Texas. Or it says Alan. Okay. Devin, how you doing? Email Max, I recognize you. Michael, how you doing? Alex, how you doing? So people are jumping on. Cleet. Corey, how's it going, man, from Georgia? So we got people jumping on the live show here. There's Daniel Fisher. How you doing? Welcoming everyone to my last. There's Justin. All right, Vital Point. What brand of leaf blower do I recommend? Andrew Penzi from Comac, New York, scored on a nice 10-point today. And we were joking. We did a little texting while the hunt was going on, and he saw this nice buck. And you know, Long Island is a fairly suburban type of area, so he wasn't super duper far from someone's house, and the person came out with a leaf blower and was blowing the driveway or something, and it didn't bother the buck at all. And anyway, it's a neat story, and I already talked to Andrew. When I meet up with him during the map reading challenge, I'd want to do a sit-down interview with him, and maybe we'll make a video out of that. But everyone who's jumping on, how you doing? Looks like some stories are already going up. Who's that? Dennis from Ohio, how you doing? And I also want to welcome everyone who has been tuning into these live shows, who have been jumping on through the text that Bowtech's been sending out. Thank you for jumping on. And tonight is exciting. This is my final one in the hunting strategies for now. And you know, we started this series to help people get ready for hunting season, and the hunting season has just started for me. In fact, I had to forfeit a hunt tonight in order to be here to do this show. And so in order to not have to keep forfeiting hunts, because I need to get out there and get some meat for the family and get some video footage for my viewers, you know, I'm going to be discontinuing the live series for right now, and we'll see about if we want to pick it up later or not. Hey Kurt, how you doing? Joseph, what's up? North Carolina. Okay, tonight, the topic for tonight is I want to talk about preparing for a trophy hunt. And that could be, you know, it could be a long range thing. Like you could be, like I live in Pennsylvania. A lot of people travel out to the Midwest, you know, to go on a hunt, or even as close as Ohio. But there's a lot that goes on in a trophy hunt, and a lot of preparation. And so I want to talk about some of my insight for that. I also used to guide out in Illinois, and I would see a lot of stuff like hunters forgetting things, or I would even learn some things from the hunters. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about that tonight. And before I go too far, I do want to mention, because I've gotten a lot of questions as far as when will the voting start for, you know, the map reading challenge, so that you can vote for these guys, but also get your name in the mix for a brand new Bowtech Range 6. And the voting went live about 20 minutes ago. I put a link in the description section of this video, and I'm sure I'm losing a lot of viewers by saying that, but I put a link for that page in the description section of this video so that people can jump over there and start the voting process. What else? There was something else I was about to say with that. So yeah, the hunting, the actual scout trip videos began to air this week. We have 2 up now, so make sure you follow the series and help the guys out that way. I mean, the way they win is their total view count on their videos, the scout trip and the hunt video. and also the hunting score, and lastly the voting from the page, the web page that I just referred you to. So all those are going to be combined for a total grand score, and the highest overall is going to win, and that's going to roll from now all the way through into February. The way that the scout trip videos are airing right now, we have 2 up, and it started with the guy who hit closest to the bullseye. I actually still have it sitting here from last week. So we had the archery contest with all the contestants on the map reading challenge. John Klopp hit closest, and then Jerry hit the second closest, and then on out, Aaron was the last person on the paper. And then we had 6 people who we did a drawing last week to see when their videos would air. So over the next, we've got 10 days following this, where each day another one of those guys, the scout trip video, is going to air. When those finish, the week after that is when the hunting videos are going to air. And just so you know how that's going to roll out, the team with the highest hunting score, so the team that gets the highest score from their harvests on the actual hunt, they're going to air the first week. And the way it's going to, so there's going to be 3 guys a week, or their hunting videos are going to air. And the way it's going to go is the person on the team with the highest score, their video will air first. The next day, the guy with the second highest score, and then the third day, the guy with the third highest score. If there happens to be a tie, then it's going to revert back to who got closer on the archery shoot to determine which guy will air first for that team for that week. So it'll air, there'll be a 4-week series, you know, because there's 4 teams where they will all air. And then once they're all up, it's just a mad race to the finish line. And of course, the team that's going to air last, obviously they're airing last because their hunt score was the lowest. And that's going to make it the hardest for them to make up ground in the views and the voting and things. So make sure you stay on top of that to help your favorite team out and your favorite contestant. So that's some of the details. Now, one thing I will mention too, if this happens to be your first live show that you're tuning into for me, then I will just tell you that I am a one-man show here, and I'm just managing my YouTube channel for questions and things like that. So if you have a burning question you'd like to ask me, I'm not sure where you're watching this live stream from, if it's on a Bowtech page, a Facebook page, or wherever. If you want to ask me that question live, come over to the Sean's Outdoor Adventures YouTube channel when it's question and answer time, and I will try to field your question. When I do get to that point, again, I will just ask, if you have a question, make sure you put several question marks at the end of the sentence to help it stand out. Also, people are doing lots of conversing in the chat room here while I'm talking, and so in order for me to help me find your question, save it until the end when I ask for questions, because if you put a question down right now, it's going to get buried most likely. So save the questions until that time. And I was asked about this last week. There is this thing that YouTube has called Super Chat. If you look at the line where you can type your thing, at least on mine, and I'm on a regular PC computer here, there's a line where I can type. It has my name and everything. And then underneath of that, there's a button you can hit to click enter. And just over from that, there's a smiley face and a $sign. I was asked about the Super Chat. People can make contributions by clicking on the Super Chat, and you can post like how much you want to contribute, whatever. Those of you who do that, if anyone does, thank you. Somebody was trying to do that last week and they were having trouble figuring that out. So I figured I'll just mention that. So let me transition now into tonight's topic. So tonight's topic is preparing for a trophy hunt. And this is a popular thing. There's a lot of hunters out there. Where I hunt in Pennsylvania, the hunting can be very frustrating. There's not very many deer per square mile. There's a lot of people who experience that. There's also a lot of people who are still kind of new to hunting, but they really crave that experience of encountering a big buck. And so sometimes they go out on paid hunts or things like that. So that's the type of stuff I want to address, but it's more than just a paid trophy hunt. I want to address hunting private land or public land, doing it yourself. So we're going to cover a lot of that. And the thing I want to start with tonight is your list of things, your packing list, the things you want to bring with you. And especially if you're new to this whole thing, I want to talk about how to create your packing list and then how to actually pack. So here's what I recommend to you. To create your packing list, sit down, try to be in a place where you have no distractions, and get a piece of paper, and then mentally go through everything you're going to do from when you leave your door to when you get in the tree stand for your hunt. And then note all the important things that you are going to need and encounter along the way. So some people don't even carry cash anymore, and you might be traveling in an area with toll roads. And so you really want to make sure you get some cash for the toll roads, especially if you don't have like an Easy Pass or some kind of a electronic payment device that will work in that state. Because if you're traveling out to a state you've never been to before, you want to make sure you don't get stuck by not being able to pay the toll. So even something as simple as that, go through each step of the way in your mind and be like, okay, I'm going to need money for tolls. And money for gas, whatever. Check the pressure in your tires before you leave. Check the oil level in your car before you leave. Check the fluids, all that kind of stuff. If you're driving, you don't want to break down on the way to your trophy hunt. So you got all that type of thing to just sit down and iron out. Go over, make sure that's all ready. If you're teaming up with somebody, like you're both going together, you're gonna have to fit all of your stuff in one vehicle. That, what are things that you can leave behind if there's not enough room? So all that kind of stuff gets pre-planned in your packing list. Secondly, and this is a very important thing in my opinion, is how to pack your vehicle. I usually am going by myself, and I have a bow case, a solid bow case, which if you have a choice between a soft or a solid bow case, I would go with solid, because there's a little more protection for your equipment. But I'm usually traveling alone. The first time I went on a long distance hunt to Illinois, I put my bow in a solid bow case, and when I got there, I had all kinds of bow problems, and I don't know what happened. The bow went out of tune, a cable stretched or something, and it was a headache and a heartache the whole time. I was out there trying to get it fixed. There wasn't any pro shops that I could get it on a bow press and things like that. That's even a good point too. I now carry one of those little portable bow presses. I forget the name of what it's called. I can look it up and later on put it in the description section of this video for when people are watching it after the live is over and it's posted to my channel. And if you're watching it on some other channel, make sure you pop over to Sean's Outdoor Adventures to find this, to get that link. But anyway, I think it's like a Bowmaster or something, but I now carry a portable bow press for emergencies like that. I needed to, my timing went out in my cams because of a cable stretch or something in the trip, and it was a disaster. So anyway, those are things that you want to kind of plan through. What I do now is I actually put my bow in the passenger seat right there where I can watch it the whole time, and nothing touches the bow. Nothing. I mean, I'm a little bit particular about it, and so that's my co-pilot, and that is crucial, because if you get there and your equipment is messed up, it's a big problem, especially if you're doing a do-it-yourself trip, even on public land. A lot of public land, they don't allow you to fire your bow for practice on the public land. So anyway, those are some things to think about. How are you going to pack your car or your vehicle, your truck? Another thing for me, this is critical, is my video camera equipment. Now, when your car is closed up during the day, the temperatures can get over 100 degrees. That's going to wreak havoc on your bow and your electronic equipment. You don't want it in the extreme heat for any period of time, especially your bow, because that's how your cables can stretch. And hey, maybe that's what happened way back then. Maybe it was in the car for a day or two in my travels, and I didn't have the car cooled down enough when it was parked in a location. I don't know, but those are all things to consider, and with your video, with all those things. So when you're packing the car, find places where things like that are not going to get damaged, or you can take care of them, make sure they stay out of the heat. And here's the last suggestion I make when you're packing your car. First of all, lay out the most important things first that you will not forget them. Your bow, if you're a self-filmed hunter like I am, your video equipment, and then your camouflage, and on down the list. Your license. Don't forget your license. So many people, and there might be people watching right now shaking their head, who go out on these trips and forget their license, and then they're trying to get someone to overnight it to them. Ugh, ugly mess. So your license, put it in the glove compartment, but the first thing you do, so that it's in the car and it's not going to be left behind. So those most important things, get those laid out first. As far as the actual packing goes, put things in first that you will need last. Like, let's say you're bringing, I'll just be crazy hypothetical. Let's say you're bringing 10 sets of clothes so that you don't have to wash clothes at all on a 10-day hunt. Put those, put most of the clothes that you're not going to need right away in first, because other stuff's going to get piled on top. And, when you get out there, you might not be able to, or have time, or want to unpack every single thing in the vehicle. So you just get those things on, make sure the things that are most critical are on top for when you get there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is transition over to my board here. I got some things I want to cover over here. Let's talk about your different options for doing a trophy hunt. So your hunting location is what I have up here. Number one, private land. I'll just go through these and then I'm going to explain them more thoroughly. Private land, a lease, a do-it-yourself outfitter hunt, a fully guided hunt, and then public land. So let's get into these. So I have private land here. Someone you know, or someone you know knows somebody, and you're going to their land. Now, in all of these instances, obviously it's great if you can get out there and take a walk around the land. In August is probably a good time for, getting into the season, because you can maybe get a handle on if there's oak trees, if there's acorns in the oak trees. That's going to have a huge impact. Food sources, like with that. There are years where great producing oak trees are not producing. They don't produce every year. They're cyclical. Some years they're on, some years they're off. If you're going there in a year that they're off, and you're planning to hunt an oak flat and there's no food there, you're not going to probably have many deer. You got to find a secondary food source that they're going to be hitting. And so that's why being out there in like August is a good time, because you're not too super close to the season, but you can kind of usually see using binoculars looking up in the trees if those acorns are there. And so identifying those types of things. If there's shooting lanes that need to be cut, that's the time to do it. Like if you're on someone's land and they're okay with you cutting a few shooting lanes, and don't, like I talked about last week, don't go crazy. Just give yourself some lanes, but leave yourself some cover too, so that you're not easily spotted by the deer. Okay, so and that's that situation where if you know the person, you can get out there, try to get out there. Another thing is ask the person, hey, if I leave a couple trail cameras, can you swap out the cards once in a while, or let me know what's on them? You got that possibility. Or if they're a farmer or whatever, you can say, hey, let me know if you're seeing deer, what they're doing, what time of day. Use that resource to get your information as much as you can. Now, sometimes people will actually get a lease for the year. There are a lot of states where you can go online and find places that are leasing for the year. Let's say you've got a chance, well, maybe several weekends, you want to do a rut hunt, but several weekends throughout the season, you want to try to get out to a property where you just have the rights to that property. There are places you can get a lease, but then, when you're doing something like that, find out what's allowed. Can I put my own food plots in? Am I the only person hunting the lease? All those details, read those leases carefully, or if you're presenting a lease, make sure, sometimes you can get that type of thing online, look it over, make some modifications, present it to the person, and as far as rates go, it's all over the place depending on what state you're going into. But a lease is an option if you want to do an out-of-state hunt. Do-it-yourself outfitter. This is a good option. I have friends that do it. It's a little bit less expensive. This is especially good if you're a more experienced hunter and you just want access to land. It's similar to a lease, only there will be other people hunting it on the week that you're not there, or the weekends. Maybe, sometimes they have different options. Sometimes you can go out on a couple weekends. Sometimes it's just for a week. You get in there for a week. And a lot of times on these do-it-yourself outfitters, they'll say, okay, I'm just going to make up a number. Let's say it's a 500 acre piece of land. They give you access to the land. Some they'll have lodging for you. Some they'll have food for you. Some it's all on you. You got to go get a hotel. You got to get all your meals. So those are all things you got to look into. Where are you going to get your food if you're going on that? How are you going to cook the food? If you're staying in a hotel, some hotels you can get a stove, some you can't. So look into all that in advance. But anyway, getting into the property, let's say it's a do-it-yourself hunt. I'm going to use the board here and do a little drawing. Let's see, do I have enough here? Let's move that over a little bit. Let's say that this blank side over here is the property, this 500-acre piece of land. What you can do with the landowner or the outfitter in advance is say, do you have any maps of the property? And do they show where your tree stands are? Because a lot of these outfitters will have a few tree stands up and they'll show you where they're at and they'll say, here's some stands to get you started. And then once you start getting a feel for the land, you can bring your climber or a portable stand and bounce around to what you like. So let me draw a couple potential tree stands. Let's say there's a tree stand here, 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 and right there. Okay, that's where the tree stands are located. There's a river here, and this is still part of the land. This is a river maybe you can't cross, you can't wade through. And maybe over here there's a big ag field, okay? I'll just put it... Okay, so here's your stand locations, things like that. Now, one thing to ask yourself is, of course, this is not the scale. I mean, 500 acres, this would be representative of like 30 acres probably or less. But let's just pretend it's 500 acres. So one thing to think is, if other people are hunting on this outfitter's do-it-yourself outfit, these stands are going to all get hit first every week. And so if you know that in advance, you can say, all right, where are some key travel corridors that the deer might use that I can get into that aren't right where these stands are? So, you can be looking to set up here. You can be, look, maybe here's a nice path between the two stands. You can look to set up here. And if this is if you're in the Midwest, some of the rivers and streams are so eroded on the banks, it's like a 12-foot drop off. And it's like almost like you're jumping to death if you jump off the cliff. And it's not something that animals are going to be able to cross easily. So a lot of times on something like this, you're going to have travel corridors along there because it creates a barrier. And so, that's why I drew the circle here. Is you've got a potential travel corridor here, and you can expect some movement along that can't be passed, things like that. So my point to you is strategy in advance. Even if you have little or minimal time to look at, or no time to look at the property before you can go hunt there. And, based on, you could even look here for a tree stand location. I would even do that. Like if the tree stands are evenly placed, let me look between them for travel corridors on the do-it-yourself outfitter, things like that. This will apply in a lot of situations. Always try to figure out where's my hunting pressure going to be when I'm not there, and what's that going to do to the deer movement. And so this is all my advice to you to be successful on a trophy hunt, and especially if you're a lot of people who are doing these do-it-yourself outfitters. Now, let me erase this for a second. All right. Now let's say our next one on the list is fully guided. And I put this here to make sure I didn't forget this. Let's say I'm talking about this right now and you're getting your interest piqued and you're thinking, man, you know what? I'd really like to do a trophy hunt this year, and I'm not set up for it. I haven't already booked it. It's late in the day. The season's already started in most states. What do I do? Well, here's something you can do. You can call outfitters or even do-it-yourself outfitters and say, have you had any cancellations? If not, will you put me on your list to be notified if you do? A lot of outfitters will actually discount that spot on that week of the hunt. So these people who are already there, they've paid a deposit, a non-refundable deposit. And what a lot of outfitters will do, because they want to still get the full money out of that, is they will sell that spot at a discounted price. Actually, they'll take off usually the amount that was deposited. So let's say it's a $2,500 hunt and it was a $500 deposit, well, you might be able to get in there for $2,000, something like that. So right now, today, this is something you could look into. You could even call around do-it-yourself outfitters. Do you have any last-minute openings? Or maybe they have openings that they just never filled, and maybe they're willing to negotiate. Like, okay, our rate is normally $1,300 for a do-it-yourself hunt. Hey, would you take $1,000 or $900? You can try to, get a little, and those few $100s will pay for your license, or it'll pay for some of your travel or whatever. So now on the fully guided hunt, let's say, again, we have the fully guided property here, 500 acres. And let me kind of shrink it this time. That huge field I drew last time, let me just say, let's say that's the field. Okay, let's get some more stands on the board here. So let's say we have, stands all over this property here. Let me just draw a bunch, Again, this is 500 acres. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. There's 10 tree stands on 500 acres. That's not too bad, right? So now, here's what I would say. I worked for an outfitter for years, and I'm going to say this because it actually happens, but it's a shame. So one of the outfitters that I worked for, and I worked for different ones, one of them worded on his website that every hunter gets X amount of stands for the week, and there are freshly hung stands that no one else has been in. They're just set for them, and every week all those stands are taken down and put in new locations for the next week. And that was a load of garbage. That was really not true. I mean, there were stands that were left up year round, and anybody climbing into that stand would know it, So a lot of these stands are left up, but they're used. They're not always fresh. And there are plenty of cases, especially in the rut, when a stand's in the right place, where someone could harvest a deer in the stand, and someone else could go into that stand the same day or the next day and harvest a deer. It happens. But there's a lot of situations, maybe even the majority, where that's not good practice. You don't want to burn out a stand. You don't want to be in a stand too much. Now, if you look at the outfitter here, going back to my last example, sometimes these stands get burnt out. Also think about when you're going on your trophy hunt. When I worked for the one outfitter, and I told you that I learned some stuff from the hunters that came in, I learned from, his name was Sam, and I have no idea whatever happened to him, but his name was Sam. Anyway, he came in and he hunted at the outfitter that I worked for my first year there. He had hunted with them several years. And the year before I was there, he was the only person who harvested a deer the week he was there, and he was there the last week of the rut, like the last week of the season. And he harvested his animal using his own climbing tree stand. My point is this: the tree stands that the outfitter had been running throughout the hunting season were essentially burnt up. The deer were onto it, they were avoiding it. The hunters that were still using those stands were not having success. The guy took his climber and he was seeing, let's say he was sitting this stand, and he had 2 occasions where he saw a good buck coming out of the field here. So he took his climber and sat right there and harvested that buck. And so bringing a climbing tree stand even to a fully guided hunt, if they allow it, is a very good idea, or even just a portable stand. Here's another thing to do. Look into what policies are. Some outfitters do not allow you to move around. Like if they drop you off at this stand, let's say they drop you off here, you're not allowed to leave that stand. They'll come and pick you up at that stand. And that was actually the policy where I worked at the one outfitter I'm talking about. But there was a guy who, we set him up in this stand. It was a hot stand, but the guy was a little bit nervous of heights, I guess, and I think he felt the stand was a little too high. So he actually got down and went over to the next stand, which was a ladder stand, and got up in that. And he ended up harvesting a nice 130-inch 9-pointer that morning. And let's alter the details, though. Let's say that it wasn't that he was a little bit nervous in the stand because it was too high for his comfort. Let's say the wind changed, or maybe the deer are spooking that are coming by the stand. if you're allowed to bump over to the next stand, that's not a bad idea, especially in the rut. If this stand, something about it with wind direction, or maybe it's down in a gully and the wind is just not working or whatever, ask, am I allowed to bump over to the next stand, if or whatever. So those are little things you can do, because if not, you could be stranded there. And sometimes you might not have cell phone service, and you're trying to text your guide saying, hey, I need to get moved or something, and he's not getting the message because you can't get a signal. So check into those things in advance. And again, if you can get a map of the property that has tree stand locations, the most current ones, or even if they're old ones, it'll give you an idea of the areas that are being hunted, and you can still look for like these areas right here where there was previously no stand right here. And so this might be an area that you might want to look at possibly setting up when you're on your hunt if you're not having success in the stands they're putting you in. And so look into all their policies as far as being able to move, or what, is it I go where I'm told, or can I say I want to sit there? I remember the very first year I got it, and I have a buddy, Josh, who, this 11 point, let me just slip over here. So my first year I guided, I met Josh Eiler. He owns his own excavating business out in the Pittsburgh area. And he lets me come out and hunt with him on a farm once in a while. And I harvested this 11 pointer on that farm with Josh. I met him on, when I first was guiding out there in Illinois, and he saw like a 180 class buck one night, and it just wasn't close enough. And he desperately wanted to go back and get another crack at that deer, but his guide would not let him go back to that spot. He's like, I don't want to burn the spot. I mean, from the guide's perspective, I understand, but here you got a guy who's paying thousands of dollars for a hunt, and he's saying, let me get at least one more crack at that animal. The guy wouldn't let him do it. He never got to go back to that stand. And I know for me personally, that would really burn me up. So that's something you might want to ask the outfitter in advance as well. Like, am I allowed to say, if I have an experience like that, can I go back to the stand? Or am I going to get like iched by the guide if the guide doesn't want me hunting that? Whatever. So look into all that kind of stuff. All right. These are all some ideas to help you be successful, again, on a trophy hunt, and that is a situation with a guided hunt. And lastly, I want to talk about public land. You know me, I'm a public land hunter for the most part. I shot the, I'll zip back over here for a minute. We got the camera hand. This 7 point here, I shot that I went in blind on public land to Iowa last year. Never ever stepped foot in the state of Iowa before last year. I drove out there in the dark, got out of the car, and I was going to spots that I had picked out on the map in advance from my map reading. And I passed on a lot of good deer, a lot of deer better than this, but it got to the end of the week and I was like, okay, if like a 120-inch 8 point comes by, I'm going to shoot, because I don't want to go home empty-handed. It's way too expensive. It cost me well over, a couple thousand. Once you factor in the cost of the tag, which was probably close to $700 when you factor in all the preference points and everything else, and then the travel, the lodging. I mean, I was probably under $2,000, but it was still a lot of money for me. And I was like, I'm not coming out here and going home empty-handed. So this guy came by the last night, and I took him. And it was a very great hunt. And I was actually talking to my buddy John Ortlieb the other day, and I wouldn't change it. I passed on an awesome forked tine, like 140-inch buck the very first day. I was there for a couple hours. And, if I could go back and do it again, I probably would have taken that buck because he was so neat with the forked tines. And there's video of him if you've never seen it. Watch my Iowa hunting trip from last year. But anyway, I wouldn't change it because being there for the whole week was a huge education. I learned so much. I learned about just how much temperature impacts the rut. I mean, in Pennsylvania, we don't have quite the elaborate rut activity in a lot of Pennsylvania. I mean, like where I shot that 11 point over there, it's a lot better than where I live because there's a lot more deer per square mile over there. There's a lot more competition with bucks. Where I live, there's not a lot of deer. You don't really get that full rut experience. But out there, you do. I mean, I was seeing 10, 15 bucks a day, and they weren't doing anything because it was just too hot. And this is actually a good point. If you're planning a do-it-yourself trophy hunt or any kind of trophy hunt, it was a record-breaking hot November for Iowa last year, and it wasn't until the end of my hunt that the temperatures finally broke and dropped off. I got a text. I just want to make sure it's nothing critical. Okay. So the temperatures finally dropped, and it was a frost that last morning, and the bucks were chasing the day that I got that buck there. And I had some encounters with bigger bucks, but they just weren't coming close enough. The point is, though, try to get it scheduled when the temperatures are going to be dropping off and when it's going to be cold. If your hunt is when it's too hot, it really reduces your chances. It doesn't eliminate your chances, it majorly reduces them, though. So when it comes to public land, I had the flexibility. Like, I already had the trip scheduled and I was all set to go. But if it was a last minute thing where, they're just calling for super hot temperatures in the 80s or 90s that week, and then the next week they're calling for it to drop off, if I could have changed my schedule, I would have tried to work that. And you have the flexibility when you're doing something like public land, because you're not, you don't have a time frame booked. When you have somebody private land up here, you might be able to adjust it as well. And so, so those are some things to think about. How is temperature going to play into your hunt? And try to get it in there when it's going to be cold, if you're doing a rut hunt especially. And a rut hunt really is one of your best times to really get a chance at a trophy animal. So I'm going to say one more thing, but before I do, I'm going to start taking questions in a second here. So start putting your questions up with question marks at the end of the sentence, and I'm going to be fielding those in a minute. But when you're trying to schedule your hunt, try to do it when those temperatures are cooled off, because that rut activity is what really gets the big boys on their feet. I really like to focus my energy in the very beginning of the season while the deer are still on their summer patterns before they get pressured and things like that. And then I focus my energy on the rut, because that mid-season, if they're getting pressured, it's a little bit harder to get at them sometimes. Especially this year is really hard because there's a huge acorn crop this year, at least in the states I'm hunting, Maryland, Pennsylvania, New York. And when there's that many acorns, the deer can go to their hiding spots, and stay there and just eat the acorns and not have to leave. They don't have to travel. And it's in their traveling is when we normally get our crack at them to harvest them. So when there's this many acorns, it really makes it difficult for us as hunters, because the deer just don't have to travel. So first week of the season and then the rut, those are the times I'm focusing most of my energy. And now I'm over here to field a couple questions as we come near to the end of our last live show for now. When does the rut usually start? Is the first question I have for Michigan Outside. It's going to vary, but when you're in the northern region of the country, usually the very end of October is when your first does are coming into estrus. This is a generalization, but that's typically what happens. So the very end of October, like Halloween, is a hot day for hunting, in my opinion, because that's when a lot of the deer just start kicking in. Some of your big boys are finally getting up on their hoof and looking around to check scrapes. There's not a lot of does in heat yet, and so it's a good time to catch a buck moving. And especially if the temperatures are cold enough. If the temperatures are hot, they're going to stay in their beds a lot of times. So that's just going to delay everything until the temperatures start to drop. But right around Halloween is when things start to get good. And don't get tricked by a lot of the young bucks. They get really excited coming into the later part of October. And if you see young bucks chasing does, that doesn't mean anything. All that means is the young bucks are excited. It doesn't mean the does are close to estrus yet. And there's a lot of young hunters who say, oh, I see chasing already. That's not like necessarily an indication that the does are coming into estrus. It's just the young bucks excited. It's when you see the big mature bucks trailing the does, that's when the does are starting to come into the heat. Again, it begins around the end of October, and it's going to peak right around November 12th or so, 12 to 14, right in that window. That's when the majority of the does will be in estrus all at once. And so, it's gonna be a madhouse. The deer are gonna be moving. The bucks might even start to lock down. If they're meeting up with hot does, they might just hang out with them. So I think that, that's why so many hunters really like the beginning of November, end of October time frame. Oh, wow, we got a bunch of questions up now. Seems like as soon as hunting season started, you haven't seen any deer. Thoughts on why? Yeah, deer are smart, and they can tell when people are in the woods. You know, we leave scent. No matter what we do, we leave scent every time we're in the woods. And as soon as the deer, they know it's an annual thing. It's just like the winter comes and the snow comes for us. It's winter time. The deer know that, hey, when I start smelling a bunch of footprints from human beings on the ground, it's danger time. And so they switch their patterns around. A lot of them can go nocturnal. So that's part of what it is. Josh Eiler, who I was talking about earlier, is calling me on the phone. Apparently he's not watching the live show right now. Seems like as soon as... Okay, I just read that one. Sean, I had a buck 6 yards away. I was still... And he jumped up, ran 10 feet, stopped, looked at me, then trotted away, didn't blow or anything. Does this mean he left area or is now nighttime? Will he be back? There's a chance he'll be back, but if he... You know, he probably winded you a little bit if he kind of trotted off like that or something. And I would say, you know, if that's an area that you're hunting, move the stand. Go to, like, he'll still hang out in that area, but he might not come back to the stand because he might be like, okay, this is a danger area. So either that or stay away from the stand for a couple weeks, hunt somewhere else. And, you know, the deer may come through there in the nighttime. And if he realizes that your scent isn't there and he doesn't think you're coming back, well, then maybe he'll get back into his routine. Let's see. Can we get more detail on your Iowa hunt last year, located, land, stay, food, etc.? I don't like to tell people where I hunt. I love you guys, but hey. But Iowa's a great place to hunt. Pretty much the whole state is good. The whole southern tier. I was in the southern part of Iowa, I'll tell you that much. And I just, booked a hotel, and, hunted the public land near the hotel. So if you want to do Iowa, I mean, I've talked to people who have hunted everywhere in different areas of Iowa, and they were all successful. I think you got a lot of good... I mean, even like southern tier of Iowa got a lot of attention because a lot of your TV shows were getting filmed there. But, that leaves northern Iowa wide open. Garrett from Do It Yourself Sportsman, I was talking to him a little bit. And he has a friend who hunts northern Iowa and draws a tag much more regularly because there's not as many people applying for the tags up there, so you can get a tag sooner. And he usually gets like a Pope and Young buck every time, like, a 120, 130, whatever. So I think, you're good to go just about anywhere. And just get a hotel and hunt the, if you want to do what I did, hunt the public land. What do I recommend for planting food plots? I would say if you have other food sources in the area, other crop fields, look at what they have and then pick a food that the deer really love that maybe they're not getting somewhere else, and that'll draw them. I mean, deer love soybeans. If they're not getting soybeans, if everyone else is giving them corn that year, give them soybeans. And that's even a great food source for the late season because you can see the deer easy, you can shoot over the soybeans and they're going to come in and eat it if that's the only food source left. But, I mean, it doesn't have to be that. Turnips and things like that are a great late season food source. So when you're planning a food plot, look at what foods you can put in there that are going to last. You can do mixes. Those brassica mixes have the turnips and stuff like that, but the deer will dig those up and eat those kind of in the winter months because they sweeten up and stuff like that. So look at what else, other food sources they have, and then try to give them something that's going to keep them there for a long time, even into the late season, that's not what's being offered somewhere else. Let's see here. Let's see. Do you wear your wedding ring while hunting? Yes, I do. You're afraid it'll fall off. Well, I actually wear mine, and I have to be careful if I'm not wearing a glove because I tend to hit it on something and it makes a clank. So I always wear mine. I never take it off. It's actually, mine's tight on there, so it actually would be hard to pull off. But they actually make a little thing that you can put on the ring to help it stay on your finger. If that's something, you know, if yours is coming off easy, maybe you can even get it resized to get a little smaller so that it doesn't come off real easy. But they make little things that you can put on there if you want to keep it on. Otherwise, I would make a routine, like have a specific place you put it before you go hunting, maybe at home. Like take it off, put it in a dish, you know, in the bathroom or something, like up in the medicine cabinet, so that you know exactly where it is, so you don't risk losing it. Let's see. Are you guaranteed a deer on an outfitter hunt? No. No, you are not guaranteed a deer on an outfitter hunt. When I worked for them, they gave a speech every time, and they said, you paid for an opportunity at a trophy whitetail, not for a trophy whitetail. I mean, weather and all kinds of other factors can impact the situation. You know, wind, frost, sleet, rain, you know, all kinds of stuff could throw the deer off. And they just might not be moving while you're there. The heat last year in November was crazy, and it really slowed the deer movement down, and a lot of people were going home with their tag and not with an animal. So you are not guaranteed a deer on an outfitter. Some outfitters will give you a percentage, like how many of their hunters get a shot. Some will say we have a 100% shot ratio, like everyone gets a shot, but not everyone hits their animal. But that's pretty high if someone's going to say that. But what's the best time of day to hunt? I personally like mornings and evenings. Morning and evening, early morning, late evening. Those are generally time when the deer are moving. Those are my favorites. Someone has a Burton bow. How good is it? Well, I don't know. I mean, it depends on if it's tuned up. And I mean, compound bows are good. They're neat pieces of equipment. So you know, each one you just have to have it set up right. I can't say much more than that. Why don't you camp in Iowa to save money? Showers and really give myself the best chance possible. If you're camping out, especially if you're doing it in the cold time of the year, like if it's 30 degrees, it's harder to scent eliminate. I mean, yeah, there's field wipes and stuff, but if you're there for a whole week, you know, that can be a challenge, you know. So that's why I said, you know what? This is a potentially once in a lifetime trip. I want to give myself the best chance possible. Plus, if you're out in the cold all day, you want to warm up, you know, and so I just wanted a place. So I budgeted for that. All right, I'm going to take one or two more questions and then finish up here. Hey, how's it going? It's going fine. Any tips for public land hunting in the mountains of North Carolina? Not too many deer, and they are always on the move. You have to identify key food sources. Get in there, especially if you can find acorns. That's going to be a huge thing for mountain deer. Also look for thick areas. Not only does it give them cover to hide, but they can browse on the leaves and the twigs. So that's my recommendation. I'm going to be hunting Kentucky. White oak acorns are everywhere on the property. Where would you focus on hunting? Ridge tops, draws, saddles. If you're going into a hunt, I mean, Aaron Jones also from this year's Map Reading Challenge is very like-minded like me. A saddle is often a great place to sit because it just is less energy expenditure for a deer to get over the top of the hill. And if there's oaks everywhere, including in the saddle, saddle's a good place to start. And I would say look for cover changes. Look on an aerial photo. Is there anywhere that maybe has a different type of tree, like pines? Or is there an area that maybe was clear-cutted at one point in time, and hunt the edges of that? Just look for any slight advantage you can get. So that would be my thing. Okay, one or two more. 16 acres, too small for private land. No, 16 acres, I mean, 2 acres. I harvested a buck right over there. I'm looking at the antlers in Maryland on 4 acres of land. And, you know, we saw other bucks there. I missed an 8-pointer there. So, no, I mean, 16 acres is not too small. It's all in how you hunt it, how you manage it, and what the hunting pressure and what the land is like around it. All right, last question. Let's see what we have here. Deer calling and rattling, or let them come in naturally? John, I personally, I like to let the deer do their own thing as much as possible. If things are just not working out, like the deer aren't moving, they're not coming my way, and the wind is in my favor, then maybe I'll do a little blind calling to see if I can make something happen. And there have been times I've called in animals that way. If you see a deer moving and it's not coming your way, it's definitely not coming your way, and the wind's in your favor, and you want to try doing some calling, then yeah, I would say go for it. So, so thank you everyone so much for joining me throughout this series, the live shows, and you know, we've got a whole bunch of MAC breeding challenge videos coming out, and every spare moment of my day, I'm trying to get these things put together. That's another reason why I don't have time for the live shows, is because I've got a tremendous amount of editing and video footage I've got to sift through to get the videos out in time for everybody. So please stay tuned to that. Make sure you get in. The voting is live, as I said before, for the Bowtech Range 6, for you to get your name in and to vote for these guys. The way the voting is, I forgot to mention this earlier, you can vote for your guy once a day from now throughout the voting period. So if you want to really help him, share his videos, you know, with as many people and ask them to watch it. That's going to really drum up the numbers for him. But also you can vote for him once a day if you want to check in and do that. If you want to get your name in the mix for the XOP air raid hang-on tree stand that I'm raffling, drawing off, whatever, however you call it, drawing a name out of the hat, just sign up for my newsletter, and we will be doing the drawing through that. Thank you, everyone. God bless you, and thanks for, I really appreciate everyone tuning into the series, and I wish you the best out there. I'm hoping to get out. I know there's been a lot of people who've actually complained this week asking me for hunting videos, and I can only get a video up if I can get out hunting and get a deer. And I can't do that right now because I'm standing here. So everyone, you got to be patient with me. And I need the, you know, the details, everything to work out for me so I can get a deer. So, but when I do, you can be assured I am going to air that video. So thank you so much for tuning in. Let me figure out how to get this turned off. And, you know, I'm pulling for everybody. Make sure you be safe out there, okay? God bless you all.